see you.
Good to see you.
Hi.
Great. So, you have some ideas about how the world thinks about protein, and in particular, maybe some ideas on how to make the process of developing and consuming protein, which we see the trend lines are going in one direction as more and more of the world becomes wealthier. We see the aspiration for protein, the need for protein.
Yeah.
But you think there's a more sustainable way of doing this. Can you give us some ideas of what you have in mind?
Well, we have to find a more sustainable way of doing this. I think you're pointing at a trend that is only accelerating. The demand for protein worldwide is growing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned already, indeed, population. We're heading towards 10 billion people by 2050. Then there is middle class growth, which also means more people have access to good proteins. And more recently, if you look, for instance, in the US, the dietary guidelines are aiming at consuming more protein per day, and projecting only in the US 5% growth year on year of protein demand. So that is huge. A challenge that was already big is only becoming bigger. So at Nutreco, today we are, according to our calculations, contributing to around 50 million plates every day. But if we see this challenge, it's going to have to increase quite dramatically. And to do that sustainably, you need to look beyond farming. Farming is for us also a core part of our business. But we're also investing in diversifying towards other protein sources, for instance, cell-based meat solutions. And it's very interesting because you can actually use the expertise that you've built over decades on animal nutrition and apply it to this very innovative new and more sustainable protein system.
No, so this is lab-grown meat, as it were.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Of course, we have had plant substitutes. That's been a bit of a venture capital craze in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And we also have agricultural methods that are more effective and efficient, better feeds and so on. Can you talk about the range of alternatives and which you think are most promising ways of improving the sustainability of protein growth?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I joined this company 8 years ago. Didn't have a past in agriculture, and I was actually amazed by the level of innovation that is happening in this industry already. So if you take what we call the traditional farming, the methods are revolutionizing across the globe. We are active in aquatic feeds and in animal nutrition. If you take aquaculture, one very interesting new system that is developing is the land-based farming. So here you can actually bring, for instance, salmon farming on land in a closed system so that it doesn't interact that much with nature. Much more sustainable in that sense. Obviously, AI and digital are revolutionizing also precision feeding. So how do you use less feed to get better outputs, in the end ensuring reduction of emissions per kilogram that is produced. And then there's these really alternative protein sources. I mentioned the cell feed. That's one where we are really heavily investing. And it is projected to be around 5 to 10%, if you listen to the optimists, of total global protein consumption decades.
And what's the big advantage there? What do you, what are the metrics here? If it were to be that 5 to 10%, so what?
Well, I think there are several advantages. So if you're not familiar with the process, it's very simple. You take a cell of an animal, then basically you put it in a liquid that nourishes the cell and into a bioreactor to create meat, real meat actually. So you don't need the animal. Well, you need the cell, but you don't need the whole animal and kill the whole animal. From an animal welfare perspective, that will be applauded by many.
I'm sure.
You need a lot less water and energy because you don't need the lifespan of an animal. So also the footprint is much lower. And then obviously you can make it in various forms and shapes, also adjusting it to the different cultural habits that you have across the globe. So if you think forward-looking, this really has a huge potential.
Sure, we've yet to achieve the taste test. I think last time I tried lab-grown meat, but
how was it?
Not great, but it's been a couple of years. So
yeah.
I leave room for innovation.
I made the mistake once of being in a tasting and saying the same thing, and then they told me the price of that just little bite that I had. you can imagine the amount of investment going into it. A hamburger is easily 15,000
I was going to
euros.
say, it makes Wagyu look
5 years
cheap,
back.
right? Exactly.
So that was an expensive bite.
And at previous Economist events, we've had, I think, various forms of insects as protein as well, which I know there are many advocates, sustainability types. I don't think our team will clarify whether we have any crickets or grasshoppers or ants outside, but if you find something crunchy, you never know. It is a sustainability conference. It could be.
Now, there's also a growing population of companion animals.
Yeah.
And they are also important customers to these new alternative sources. You mentioned insects. That's already heavily used in pet food solutions. This cell-based meat solution is also potentially, for that market, very interesting.
Right. Now, you had said in passing AI. Can you talk a little bit? The idea of precision agriculture has been with us for a while, obviously.
Yeah.
We've had drip irrigation, of course, that's to do with water, but the Israelis pioneered that many years ago.
Yeah.
We've had some of the tractor companies like John Deere and others have updated their equipment to be automated and enabling of precision harvesting and precision seed dropping and so on. But what do you have in mind when you talk about the role of modern technologies in agriculture?
Well, I mean, the opportunities are huge. I think,
but it's always been conceptual. What's muddy boots on the ground? What's actually happening, and how does it compare to the trajectory of, going vegetarian or eating a lab-based meat? Where's the opportunity here? Which are the levers that are most powerful?
So, obviously, sharing the data across your value chain completely transforms how you're able to collaborate. I believe that if you look at a value chain as a linear thing, you're not getting the optimal solutions because it's like little parts that are not really interacting across the chain.
Right.
Food system is a very complex system, so it requires a complex solution. And data turns actually this complexity into very clear insights that you can take decisions on. So that's the overarching theme. Now, then you can use it for predictability. You can use it to accelerate decision making on farms. You can use it to indeed trigger precision feeding further. So it's an accelerator of many things that indeed partly are already happening, but not at the level and depth that we can now apply it.
I'm going to see if there are any questions from the floor. Somebody must have some experience with these novel forms of proteins. See if you can collect a good question for me or put it in the Slido. Meanwhile, I do want to press you on something. Look, over my career at The Economist, I've gone to many farms in the developed world, in places like Kansas, which are very large scale, Brazil, world class and large scale, but also in the developing countries, whether it's Latin America, where I was bureau chief early in my career, or in China and India.
Yeah.
What I know about farmers is they tend to be quite conservative. Meaning one failed harvest can wipe out a family and a generation of farmers. And so they tend to be quite cautious in adopting new technologies. Now, they become great advocates when they see them working. But if you simply turn up, they think of you as a snake oil salesman turning up, peddling the latest new seed or fertilizer. They've seen all this before. So how do you persuade an industry, in particular farmers, to adopt new innovations? What's a technique you advocate? Since you're obviously advocating change, how do you persuade a traditional conservative base of users?
Yeah, so farmers are like humans, right? They are naturally, when change comes, not everybody stands up and starts.
No, but it's more than that. If I say, hey, look, try a new toothpaste, maybe someone will try one. There's no big deal. If you don't like it, go back. Yeah. But if you change your harvest, how you do it, you lose an entire year's worth of resources. It's a much bigger deal for them.
Absolutely. But I would reject the notion that farmers are sort of more held back on that. I don't think that that's the case. I think farmers are innovating every day. Now, they are maybe human in the sense that if the change comes from outside, if someone comes with a solution that says, hey, what you're doing every day, you can do it differently, and then it becomes more sustainable or more animal friendly or whatever. Then there might be a bit of, well, show me how it works.
They tend to say, show me.
That's the point, again, where data really comes in. Now, obviously, different parts of the world are in different stages. But, take Ecuador. Ecuador is a market in Latin America where 10 years ago, shrimp farming was a upcoming industry. Today, it is the biggest producer. And what happened there is technology. So, and it started with one farmer, the first mover.
What's the exact technology?
It's fantastic. So It's sonic feeding.
Okay.
So imagine you have a big pond of shrimps this size. There's a microphone in the water connected to a feeding equipment, and it actually hears the shrimp chew. And based on the chewing, the feeder provides the feed. So in the past, before you had this, you were actually feeding the pond. So a lot of waste. And the animals were actually not getting the food that they really needed. Now it's much more precise, and the growth has exploded over the years, turning Ecuador and the industry in Ecuador to really a growth engine for this, producing healthy proteins and helping local economy grow. That's a great example.
If you look at Asia, hands up, how many of you knew about the sonic feeding for shrimps here? Okay, so that's you learned something. One person.
Innovators.
Fantastic. That's great. That's a great example.
Yeah. Now in Asia, for example, China or India, there's a huge potential for this industry as well. But then you need to understand what's the local challenge there, and it's very much focused on health.
Right.
So in these markets, farmers are not applying the same techniques because they put a lot of animals in the same space.
Right.
Which then feeds into diseases. So you need to come up with solutions that challenge that or that tackle that challenge.
Right.
So it's not just finding out a solution and then applying it everywhere. You need to, with farming, really understand what are the local conditions, the real unmet needs locally, to then drive breakthrough innovations.
Great. Now I see we do have a question, so let's get the microphone here. Please identify yourself.
Hi, thank you. My name is Lucy Neves, and I have a background in strategy innovation, and I'm just really curious about gaining your perspective on how do we actually drive the adoption of whether it's meat lab-based foods or perhaps plant-based diets, for example, which has been previously part of the direction the UN and other organizations, but yet it's been very conservative in the most recent years. And I'm also curious because often what we see in the market, whether it's plant-based products or so on, often comes at a premium. And where I see the gap is the acceleration of technologies to be able to achieve the economies of scale, that hopefully it becomes the norm to be able to access these produce, to be able to drive the green transition overall and be able to make these more accessible to consumers across all layers of society to be able to drive that and accelerate that adoption.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a great question. I think there's three axes that you always need to pay attention to if you want to grow these new and grow the adoption of these alternatives. You have the technical part of it. So how do you make sure that you innovate to make the solution more affordable, ensure good quality, consistent quality? There's the regulatory aspect. So take cell-based meat. The market most applying this today is Asia Pacific, and that's because of regulatory guidelines that are there.
So they're more pro-innovation over there.
They're stimulating this more. There's and the third axis is of course financing. So you need people with long-term vision that believe in a certain solution, that are able to weather a certain storm, because this is never a road just upwards. It's a bumpy road. So finance, technical solutions, and regulatory need to work together to grow an industry and fuel adoption of an industry.
On the financing front, are you finding that this is something where public-private partnerships are necessary, or do you find the family groups or ones that might have a private equity, what business model would finance it?
So the role that we are taking as Nutreco in that is we're a strategic investor. So take the land-based farming that I mentioned. We have invested in several projects as a strategic investor, meaning other financiers understand this industry, and if you're willing to put money into a concept, then that also gains the confidence of others to come. So we're sort of this first to get the financing coming, and you need that mix of strategic and more real financial investors.
Great. Well, thank you. I think you've given us an exciting look into an innovative future, and one that cuts right at a significant chunk of global emissions that's often overlooked. The world tends to focus on energy, a little bit less on the agriculture and farming sector. So it's good to know there's some astonishing innovations coming, including shrimp that listen to Bo's speakers apparently, and enjoy delicious food on demand as a result.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Nice round of applause for our speaker. Thank you, Bastiaan.